2017 Southern Kentucky Festival of Books. I'm Barbara Deeb, and we're bringing you Outside the Book. Right now, we're talking with author Gwenda Bond. Gwenda, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You're a Kentucky native.
I am. I grew up in the mountains of eastern Kentucky and now live in Lexington.
I love it. And you write about strong female heroines.
I do. I write about ambitious girls.
You do, and one of the, everybody knows Lois Lane.
Yes, yeah. Getting to write Lois Lane is a real privilege. She was the first working woman model for, I think, so many of us, and probably is the reason I majored in journalism in college.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Wow, because you used to be a press secretary for former Kentucky Governor Paul Patton.
I was, but I was a journalism major in college and always obsessed with, I love working with reporters and the news, so I always joke that the Lois Lane books were books I'd been training for my whole life without realizing it.
Well, and she has stood the test of time.
She has. Well, she tends to reflect whatever era, what is going on in terms of women and sexism in the workplace. And so it's really nice to be able to bring a modern version of her for teens, because that's really never existed before. She's never had an origin story.
That's true. And you said for teens.
Yes, but it's for teens of all ages.
It is.
Teens and everyone who has ever been a teen.
Well, and the young adult market right now is it's amazing. It's just emerging and it's going off the charts. But what kind of challenge does that present to you to write for that audience?
It's actually very freeing, because I think that teens and kids will read anything as long as it holds their attention and doesn't talk down to them. And I would say that probably my readership is about half adults and half teenagers, because I think YA is for everybody now. So I just write the best book I can and kind of trust that people will get it.
Well, that's interesting. So you don't make an effort to try to speak their language, of a
I'm
teenager?
obsessed with 1940s movies, and so sometimes my editor will be like, this sounds like something from a screwball comedy in the 1940s, and I'll be like, busted.
Yeah.
But no, I basically make up kind of my own slang, and very much like Lois is the original fast-talking, right?
Yeah.
Like newsroom lady, and so it's a real pleasure to write that kind of bantery dialogue.
I have to know this. So you were a former Kentucky governor's press secretary. You majored in journalism. How'd you get this gig? In other words, Lois Lane, to be able to take, one of the consummate characters.
I was very lucky. So the entire time I worked in politics, which I loved, it was a great day job. For 17 years, I worked in Frankfurt and wrote on the side. And my first novel was published in 2012. And in 2014, DC Comics really heavily recruited me to write this project. It's like a great gift, and I did not ask too much about why they wanted me to do it, because it's been such a dream come true. I would never in a million years have thought I would get to write this character, one of the great characters of American pop culture. And Clark Kent's in the book too, so you get to write Superman. That's pretty big stuff.
Wow, it sure is. But having said that, there's a responsibility you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure when you're writing a character already has millions of fans around the world who will hate it if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
But I've been very lucky in that the Lois Lane fandom really embraced me and the books, and they've been so supportive. There was a nonfiction book a comics expert wrote about Lois Lane that came out last year, and the last chapter is about these books and how it's a heartening new chapter in her life, so as a character.
That's awesome. And the images too, that can speak volumes in and of itself.
Oh yes, definitely. I think Lois is really important too, because she is a hero that doesn't have powers. She is absolutely a hero that anybody can aspire to be. Her main thing that she does is stand up to bullies and people in authority who are misusing their power.
She's human.
She's human.
She's human.
Right.
Indeed,
But
she is.
She's Superman. But
There you go. You go. Now, you are you collaborate with your husband.
I do.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So, we have written a new series for younger readers, a middle grade series called the Supernormal Sleuthing Service.
Whoa. Super normal sleuthing service.
Yes. The first book's The Lost Legacy, and it comes out in May. And it's about 3 kids who live in a hotel for monsters in New York City and solve mysteries. And we've had a blast writing together.
No kidding. Where do we go to this hotel?
I know, right? It's very elite.
Soon to find out. So that's the next chapter for you.
Yes.
Pardon the pun, but then what?
Then I have another book that's actually coming out called Strange Alchemy. That's a book for teens. That's my take on a modern day version of the Lost Colony of Roanoke Island.
Oh.
So it's kind of a modern day disappearance on the Outer Banks, which will be fun.
Interesting. And so is there something yet out there to be done for you?
Oh, sure. Like, there's always more books to write. I've got at least 2 secret projects on the back burner at any given time.
Now, is there a moment, because a lot of the authors that we're going to speak with at this 2017 Festival of Books have had their books translated into movies on the big screen. Is that something you aspire to? Oh,
I would love to have that happen, obviously. I would love them to bring the dump truck of money.
Yes, that would be amazing.
But, I have had some options on things. My first book actually almost made it into a TV series on MTV, but is in the way of most things in Hollywood, died on the vine. So I try not to worry about it and just put things out there and, have people in Hollywood that send them around to folks.
And do what you love.
That's right.
Indeed.
I mean, I get to live my dream. I get to do my dream job every day.
Lois Lane, Gwenda Bond.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Barbara.
Outside the Book continues. I'm Barbara Deeb, joined now by David Grann, best-selling author, award-winning staff writer, sports podcast junkie. Are you a sports podcast junkie?
I am a sportscast junkie. It is true,
Really?
yes.
And yet you don't write sports.
I've only done 2 sports stories, but I would actually like to do more. Yeah.
Really?
The only problem with sports stories now is they've become such celebrities that it's harder to get to them. In the old days, you could cover them more, but I did a piece on Ricky Henderson, and I did a piece on Barry Bonds once.
Did you?
Yeah.
And so was there, I went in the Giants locker room. That was a moment.
I spent a lot of time in the Giants locker room, and one time Barry said to me, I had been waiting. I followed him around for 2 weeks because he had supposed to let me interview him, but each day I would show up, he wouldn't talk to me, and then finally, after 2 weeks of following him around, he said, and he brought me in, and we chatted in the clubhouse, yes.
And was it a nice, casual
He actually,
chat?
it was actually. Barry was a little bit complicated, but he was pretty generous with his time.
Complicated. We're all pretty complicated.
We are all complicated, yes.
Speaking of complicated,
Yes.
you have your star is rising.
Oh,
I mean,
thank
you
you.
have really accomplished so much. The Lost City of Z is a movie.
It is a movie,
Brad
yes.
Pitt.
It's
Production
a movie.
company.
Yeah, Brad Pitt's production company. He stars Charlie Hunnam, who plays Percy Fawcett, who is this explorer who disappeared, and it's a true story, explorer who disappeared in the Amazon in the 1920s looking for a lost city with his son. And it's a terrific movie. I discovered, though, in getting a movie made, it is even harder to get a movie made than it is to hump through the city to find a lost city.
Truly, truly.
But it's great to be here today.
Well, and I have a question.
Sure.
Do you, we've talked to a lot of authors who also have had that wonderful thing happen to them.
Yes.
Do you get much input?
It's limited. But in this case, people often ask me what my contribution was, and I always say I wrote the book. The nice thing about this project, it was in the hands of James Gray, who is the director and the screenwriter. It was in the hands of Brad Pitt's production company, who have made one Oscar award-winning movie after another. Mm-hmm. And so I had the comfort it was in good hands. And James would periodically call me asking for information, bits on character. And my wife and I went to visit the set when they were filming in Colombia.
Did you have to steel yourself in the event that you saw it and it was not at all?
I don't think any author, I think every author has that fear. And in this case, I got to sit in the theater and appreciate it as a work of art. It was a great sense of relief. But like I said, I think it depends who's adapting the material. I had a high level of confidence in this case.
That's huge. Your newest book,
yes,
which I am just so enchanted by this story. Tell us a little bit about Killers of the Flower Moon.
So Killers of the Flower Moon is about the Osage Indians, who in the 1920s had become the wealthiest people per capita in the world because of oil underneath their land in northeast Oklahoma. And then they began to be mysteriously murdered in one of the most sinister crimes in American history. And it became one of the FBI's first major homicide cases and one of J. Edgar Hoover's first major homicide cases.
So this is truly a fascinating, and you have to put this in context. Here we have Native Americans in the 1920s, the richest people per capita
Yes.
because of this oil.
Because
that
this
was
oil
found.
belied long-standing stereotypes of Native Americans that could trace back to the first contact. They lived in terracotta mansions. They had white servants, which caused a lot of envy and prejudice from whites. It was said at the time, whereas one American might own a car, each Osage owned 11 of them.
Owned 11 cars.
Yes. There was only about 2,000 Osage who participated in the oil trust, who was getting revenue for the oil. And just to give you a sense of the amount of money, in 1923, those 2,000 or so accumulated collectively what would be worth today more than $400 million.
This is unbelievable. Where did you come upon this story?
So I first heard about it from an historian in 2011, and I was shocked that something so essential to our history, such an important episode, it's really about the formation of this country.
Sure.
It's one of the most sinister crimes. It's about the birth of modern law enforcement, that I knew nothing about this. So I traveled out to the Osage Nation in 2012, and when I was there, I went to the museum, and they had this large panoramic photograph on the wall, and you can actually see it on the title page. And it was taken in 1924. It showed members of the tribe along with white settlers. It looked very innocent, but a part of the panel had been cut out. And I asked the then museum director, why was it missing? And she said there was a figure there so frightening she had decided to remove it. And she then pointed to the missing panel, and she said the devil was standing right there. She then went down into the basin and retrieved an image of the missing panel, and it showed one of the masterminds of the killers of the Osage. And for me, the process really grew out of trying to understand who that figure was, that anguishing history. Here was something that the Osage had removed this picture because they can't forget, and yet so many people, including myself, had no knowledge or had neglected this part of history. And so hopefully this book will help fill in some of that canvas.
Well, and just without without spoiling it, if you will.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, was justice served? I mean, as you say, modern law enforcement. There are photos of J. Edgar Hoover
Yes,
there.
Jay Young, yeah. He was only 29 at the time.
Yes, unbelievable. But did they get the people that did these murders?
So the Bureau eventually sent in an undercover team led by an old frontier lawman named Tom White. One posed as an insurance salesman, other posed as a cattleman. There was even an American Indian agent who went in, probably the only one in the Bureau. They were able, by following the money, to ultimately capture several of the killers. But one of the things I try to document in the book is that there was a much deeper and darker conspiracy that the Bureau never exposed.
And you do.
I try to document that as best as possible with the help of the Osage.
And the interesting thing about this book, because, when you're dealing with, you're documenting history, it's hard to tell that story sometimes. And to make it entertaining and make people want to read it. So you took it from different perspectives.
I did. I told it from 3 chronicles. The first chronicle is told largely from the point of view of a really remarkable woman named Molly Burkhardt. She's an Osage woman. In many ways, she straddles not only 2 centuries, but 2 civilizations. She was born in the 1880s. Within 3 decades, she was living in a mansion with white servants and married to a white husband. Her family becomes the prime target of the conspiracy. And one by one, she watches as her sister is shot, another sister is blown up in her house, her mother dies of poisoning. And so she kind of navigates and is trying to find justice, crusading for justice to great peril to her own life. She shows remarkable courage. She really puts a bullseye on herself by fighting for justice for her family. And then the second chronicle is told largely from the point of view of the lawman Tom White, who is in many ways like Molly too. He straddles 2 centuries. He was born in a log cabin on the frontier, and by the time of the Osage murders, he's wearing a suit and a fedora. He's trying to learn fingerprinting and handwriting analysis. He has to file all this paperwork, which he can't stand. And then the final perspective is told for me in the present, trying to fill in those gaps in the history that the others weren't able to discern.
A story from the 1920s that still is so relevant.
It still resonates today, yeah.
It does.
I spoke to a young Osage man, probably about 28. He's a veteran of the Army. He was an Army scout. He served in Afghanistan, received a Purple Heart when he was shot in the leg. During the Standing Rock demonstrations over the Access Pipeline there, he went on a pilgrimage. He walked almost the whole way from Oklahoma to North Dakota. He hitched a ride at the very end because he had to get there by a certain date. And during that quest, he told me that he thought about the Osage murders. And even though this event is separated by nearly a century, even though the Sioux aren't making money off oil, they're trying to protect their land, he and other Osage told me it's still about the same fundamental issue, which is the rights of Native Americans to protect their resources and their land.
What a beautiful story. I don't want you to go away, but we're running out of time. So is it your hope, maybe a movie?
I think it's
book?
a very cinematic story. It has these remarkable characters. I should call them individuals because they're real people. Remarkable individuals at the heart of the story. It is a story about good and evil, and there has been interest. And so I think the hope with a movie is a story like this really is so important, and it has been neglected to history, and a movie would hopefully get that story so that no longer would there be that blank space in our history.
And what's next for you?
At the New Yorker magazine right now, I'm working on a story that's a little bit lighter about an explorer. I need a little break, and I'm looking for a new book idea. So if anybody has one, please email me. I'm always open. Finding a book idea is really hard.
Oh, no, not no. Well, continued success to you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you,
Thank
David
you.
Grann.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Outside the Book continues from the 2017 Southern Kentucky Festival of Books. I'm Barbara Deeb, and I am joined now by one of my personal favorites, Charles Ghigna, children's author. And your last name is spelled differently than it's pronounced.
Well, it's Ghigna, like lasagna, which also ends in GNA. So I think it's pronounced like it's spelled.
Just like it's spelled, for sure.
But that's why they call me Father Goose, because it's so difficult.
Yes, his email is pagoose. So let's talk a little bit about, for those who've maybe never heard of you or read your work, writing children's books as an adult is a special challenge.
Well, for some of us it is, but for me, I wake up every day, I'm still 8 years old. So
Gotcha.
I live in a treehouse in the middle of Alabama, so that gives you an idea of my thought processes. But I climb the stairs every day, and I look out the window and turn on my computer when I'm not traveling around, and I make things up. My latest book, though, my newest baby, actually was a departure for me because it took a lot of research, which I usually don't do. I usually just make things up, like this book, which was
Animal
Tracks. And then they asked me, Animal Planet and Discovery Channel asked Time Books to put together a book about exotic animals, newly discovered, some of them, from the bottom of the oceans to the depths of the Amazon jungle. And they asked me to write it. And so I hung up the phone. It was like, now what? And I went immediately to my local library and said, help. And I started there, and then I talked to zoologists and biologists and scientists, and we came up with a 128-page book of wild animals, from everything from the blobfish to the red-lipped batfish. And the photographers were chosen from Animal Planet, some of the top animal photographers from around the world, and made my little words look very good.
But, so how many how many animals?
128 pages, and that's a good question. I don't have a number.
Oh, we'll have to find out.
Yes.
But they are strange, unusual, gross, and cool animals.
Some of them are cool.
Because some of those are kind of gross.
Yes.
But when you're trying to attract an audience of a certain age,
right,
somehow gross and strange really attracts.
They do work. In fact, the editor said we even need a chapter called Poop.
Oh.
But that's scientific, the size and where you find it. And you're walking in the jungle, want to know what you're stepping in. And,
yes.
Is that a bear or a goose or whatever?
Right.
So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. But I had to wear two hats because, as I said, I'm usually the little kid looking at the world through crazy eyes and imagination. But this, I had to also step outside of that and look at it scientifically and get all the information and can digest it into a small package with fun for the kids to read.
So you hit on something. You had to document and be
Oh,
on
yes.
point, but
Right.
you also had to incorporate fun.
Well, I tried, yes. And I think kids are liking it. The greatest satisfaction for me, other than the rave reviews we're getting and all the sales, is watching when a child opens the book and they'll look at it and then they're gone for 10 or 15 minutes just looking through this. And then I know it was a success. And often the kids want to tell me about the animals they know about when they find, they already knew about the blobfish, for example, and I didn't until I wrote the book. But it was in 2013, it was voted the world's ugliest animal on the
Really?
planet. But I don't think so. It actually
little thing.
looks like my grandfather in some ways, so I like him a lot.
If only you could name them,
Am
huh?
I right?
So, so this is, congratulations that
Thank
you
you
were
very much.
contacted to do this because
Yes.
that's quite an honor.
Well.
But now that's changed you in a certain way. It's changed, I suspect. Now you can maybe go on and do something different like this again.
Well, it's interesting you should ask that good question, because you know how sometimes when we're pushed out of our comfort zone,
Yeah.
we wind up sometimes doing better things than we thought we were able to when we take a risk. And I was in my comfort zone writing all these other books that are made up. And so, yeah, this did give me that. And I'm already compiling lists for my next book
Gotcha.
of exotic animals. But actually, my very next book, I have 11 books coming out this fall.
11 books coming
yes.
out this fall?
2 series.
What have you been doing lately, huh?
Well, they all happen at once, I guess. But
2 series.
for the very young ones, I'm doing a fire safety series, 4 books in that, and then one on math books set in winter time, what you see in winter that you can count and divide and subtract. But the big book is a picture book called First Times, and it's everything in a child's life, those precious first times when they do their very first things. So it's a bedtime story, so a child can think about what they did that day as the parent and child are reading, and also get ideas for the next things they want to do the next few days, or to read to their little brother and sister.
What are some of the first time things that you point?
Well, it starts out, first times are fun times from summer to spring. The first slide down the slide, the first swing on the swing. First time you tie your shoes, first time you do everything. And there's some humor in there too, but I'll let that be a surprise. But it goes through all the things in a natural course of a day that for a child, doing it for the first time is exciting, and
Sure.
they remember those first times, and so do the parents and
Well,
grandparents.
and I was just going to say, and what a great way to walk down memory lane and realize how much we take for granted as
That's
adults.
true. It helps us look at the world through their eyes. And my grandchildren inspired most of it. So,
Indeed. Well, continued success to you.
thank you very much, Barbara.
And thank you. And we'll read about strange, unusual, gross, and cool animals.
Thank you.
Indeed, we will. Charles Ghigna has joined us on Outside the Book. Outside the Book continues from the 2017 Southern Kentucky Festival of Books. I'm Barbara Deeb, and I am so honored to be joined by the man, the one, the only, Hillbilly Jim. Hello.
Barb, so good to see you. You know, I'm a big fan of yours.
Well, thank you.
And all the shows that you do, and of course you and I have been friends for many years, and it's just an honor to be here with you today.
Well, and it's exciting the fact that there's now a book, Hillbilly Jim, the incredible story of a wrestling superstar.
Wow.
And you are that.
Thank you.
You know,
dear.
you were just talking about WWE, and that you were at the first one. They just had the 33rd,
33rd,
in
yes.
Orlando.
Yeah.
And you were at the
First
first
one was in Madison Square Garden, and I remember some of the guys on the show. Some of the luminaries. They had Liberace.
Ah.
They had of course Muhammad Ali was a special guest referee, and the main event was Mr. T was involved in it, and Cyndi Lauper and all those days. It was just a magical time, and I kind of got lucky, Barb, that I was born in the right decade for the wrestling business. And Jimmy Hart says it better than anybody. You know Jimmy Hart, Mouth of the South, one of the managers. I can't take his phrase, but he says somehow or another, this group of guys from the 80s, we got woven into the fabric of America some kind of way, because people still remember us, and what an honor it is. I can't believe it's been 33 years of WrestleManias.
So you're saying timing played a large role, but you also had to be, not anybody could do what you did.
Well, you have to be ready. I mean, I saw a famous quote from the greatest band of all time, probably the Beatles. You know, they were turned down on several different occasions with big record companies, but they always said that you have to have yourself ready, so when you get your foot in the door, you got to be able to carry the load. A lot of times you can get a look, but sometimes the window of opportunity will close on you. So yeah, you've got to be ready, and that wrestling business is very competitive. So when you get a shot, especially in the big leagues, you got to deliver. You know.
Do you remember that first shot when you got that foot in the door and you were in the big leagues?
You know, I had a remarkable wrestling career to begin with because I didn't stay local very long. And I wrestled a few little towns, and I went out to Western Canada and worked for the legendary Stu Hart and wrestled out there for a while. And I guess you could say I kind of got my feet wet in the business. So I came back, went down south, and wrestled for the AWA with Jerry Lawler out of Memphis. And then I got my shot with the WWF. And I got to tell you, going from those smaller promotions to going to the WWF was like the equivalent of going from riding in a Volkswagen to riding in a limousine. And I realized once I got there, Barb, I was going to stay as long. They're going to throw me out.
But you stayed, you endured, you
yes.
carried on. But this kind of business, I mean, you still look amazing physically, but it takes a toll, doesn't it, on the body?
A lot of my guys, sad to report, are not here anymore. They live a celebrity kind of a rock and roll lifestyle, and they get caught up in all the trappings and stuff. And dear, I'm glad to tell you, I didn't get caught up in that. I knew someday that I was going to come right back where I always grew up at in South Central Kentucky, and I never lived. I never was one of those guys that went out and got 3 or 4 sets of families and had to start all over again. I decided, listen, I'm going to live here where I'm at, and I'm going to come home all the time, and it kind of kept me grounded. So it hurts me when I see my guys, and then when I go to several events. As I told you, I just went to WrestleMania 33 in Orlando, and I saw some of the guys that I wrestle with, and some of them aren't in real good shape. And, you know, it's easy to complain,
Sure.
But after I saw those guys, I said, you know what, Jim, I'm going to go home and I'm going to stop complaining, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and keep trying. So I'm happy to be here, and you know, it's good to be in Bowling Green here where you know everybody. It's always good to be from somewhere where you feel comfortable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's something somebody may not know about you that you'd want to tell them?
Well, I'm a music guy. I really love music a lot. I've got a lot of instruments, guitar instruments, probably 60 or 70 that I've collected over the years. And I've been playing guitar since I was little. My mother could play guitar, and people in her family could. And there were a few tunes when I was a kid growing up. There was a real famous country song by Mother Maybelle Carter, who's one of the more famous, I guess, architects of country music. She used to play a song called Wildwood Flower, a guitar song. And I said I would be the cat's meow if I could learn how to play that. So that's what made me want to learn how to play guitar, and I began doing that. And I've always loved guitar, and I've always played it. When I was a kid growing up in school, it wasn't fashionable for athletes to be musicians at the same time. The coaches wouldn't allow it. And since I could only play sports for a while, I kind of was a closet guitar player, and was all the way the athlete. So I still enjoy that just as much as ever, and I like to go out and play. And I've done that all over the country. Got 2 gold records at home off of music that I did through the WWF, and I've just been blessed with that. So that's one of my hobbies I like to tell everybody about. I enjoy guitars.
Love it. We've been talking with the legendary, the closet musician. It's not so closeted,
That's
though, is
right.
it? Hillbilly Jim. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear.
From the 2017 Southern Kentucky Festival of Books, I'm Barbara Deeb. Thanks for joining us.